What happens when an alien civilization, convinced of their technological superiority, decides to showcase their most advanced warships to the primitive humans? They expected awe. They expected submission. They expected us to bow before their gleaming vessels that had conquered a dozen star systems. They never expected what humanity had been quietly building in the outer reaches of our solar system. This is the story of first contact gone wrong. Not because of hostility, but because of pride. The Zephyrian Empire thought they were offering humanity a glimpse of true power. Instead, they were about to discover why you should never underestimate a species that turned metal tubes and controlled explosions into a path to the stars. Some lessons are learnt the hard way. Some pride comes before a fall that echoes across the galaxy. Welcome to the day humanity reminded the universe that we don't just reach for the stars, we reshape them. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of stars beyond the reinforced viewing ports. The coffee in her hand had gone cold hours ago, but she couldn't bring herself to move. Today would change everything for humanity, and she knew it with the certainty that came from 30 years of military service. The first alien transmission had arrived 3 months ago, not the chaotic burst of mathematics and physics that scientists had always predicted, but a clear, almost condescending message in perfect English. The Zephyrian Empire, as they called themselves, had been watching Earth for decades. They had learned human languages, studied human culture, and decided that humanity was ready for what they termed elevation. Admiral long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system, reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen from the communications station. Her voice carried the barely controlled excitement that had infected everyone at Lunar Command since the aliens had announced their arrival. Elena finally turned from the viewport, her weathered face betraying none of the anticipation that churned in her stomach. How massive are we talking, Chen? Readings suggest vessels approximately 2 kilometers in length, ma'am. 3 of them maintaining formation just beyond Neptune's orbit. They're moving at roughly 15% light speed and decelerating. 2 kilometers. Elena had seen the largest ships in the human defense fleet, and even the mighty Prometheus-class dreadnoughts barely reached 800 meters. The aliens weren't just making an entrance, they were making a statement. Any word from Earth Command? Elena asked, settling into her command chair. President Morrison is en route to Geneva for the emergency United Nations session. All military forces have been placed on high alert, but with strict orders not to take any aggressive actions. Chen paused, consulting her displays. Admiral, we're also receiving updates from the outer system monitoring stations. These ships, they're beautiful, ma'am. Unlike anything our engineers ever imagined. Elena nodded slowly. She had seen the preliminary images transmitted by the deep space telescopes. The Zephyrian vessels looked more like works of art than instruments of war. Sleek curves of what appeared to be living metal, surfaces that seemed to shift and flow in the starlight, and energy patterns that defied current human understanding of physics. They were undeniably alien and undeniably advanced. The communication console chimed with an incoming transmission. Admiral, we're receiving a direct hail from the lead alien vessel. They're requesting permission to approach Earth for what they call a demonstration of mutual capabilities. Patch it through to the main screen, and make sure Earth Command receives a simultaneous feed. The main display flickered, and suddenly, Elena was face-to-face with her first alien. The Zephyrian was tall and elegant, with elongated features that seemed almost elven. Their skin had a subtle blue tint, and their large dark eyes held an intelligence that was both familiar and utterly foreign. When they spoke, it was with a voice that seemed to resonate with harmonic undertones. Greetings, Admiral Vasquez of Luna Station. I am Fleet Commander HFY of the Zephyrian Empire. We come bearing gifts of knowledge and partnership, but first, we believe it would be educational for your species to observe the capabilities that have made our empire great. We request permission to conduct a peaceful demonstration in your solar system. Elena kept her expression neutral, though every instinct screamed that this was a show of force disguised as diplomacy. Fleet Commander, on behalf of Earth and the United Nations, I welcome you to our solar system. However, I must ask what form this demonstration would take. HFY's expression could almost have been described as a smile, if smiles could carry such undertones of superiority. We will showcase 3 of our newest warships, vessels that represent the pinnacle of Zephyrian engineering and have helped us maintain peace across 17 star systems. Your people have always been creative with their military technologies, but we believe it is time you understood what true power looks like. The transmission ended, leaving Elena staring at a blank screen. Around her, the command center had gone silent. Everyone had heard the condescension in the alien's tone, the casual dismissal of human achievement, wrapped in diplomatic language. "Ma'am," Chen said quietly, "Earth Command is requesting a secure channel." The next 6 hours passed in a blur of conferences, tactical assessments, and increasingly tense communications with Earth. The Zephyrian ships had entered the inner solar system with casual ease, their passage accompanied by gravitational anomalies that suggested mastery of forces humanity barely understood. They took up position near Mars, close enough to Earth to be visible to the naked eye, far enough away to avoid being seen as an immediate threat. President Morrison's voice crackled through the quantum communication link from Geneva. "Admiral, the Security Council has agreed to allow this demonstration, but I want every sensor array in the fleet focused on those ships. We need to understand what we're dealing with." "Understood, Mr. President. I've already deployed reconnaissance drones and ordered all available ships to monitoring positions. Whatever they're planning to show us, we'll record every detail." The Zephyrian demonstration began at exactly 1400 hours Earth Standard Time. Alina watched from Lunar Station as the 3 alien warships arranged themselves in a perfect triangle formation, their hulls beginning to glow with internal energy. What followed was a display of technology that left every human observer speechless. The ships seemed to fold space around themselves, appearing and disappearing across vast distances in the blink of an eye. They fired weapons that turned asteroids to dust with beams of coherent energy that human senses couldn't even properly classify. One vessel demonstrated what could only be described as gravity manipulation, creating artificial black holes that consumed debris before dissolving harmlessly into space. But it was the ships themselves that truly captured Elena's attention. As they maneuvered through their demonstration, she could see that they weren't just built from advanced materials, they seemed to be alive. The hulls shifted and flowed, weapons emerged from surfaces that had appeared smooth moments before, and the entire vessels pulsed with a rhythm that reminded her uncomfortably of a heartbeat. "Biological technology," whispered Dr. Nair. Marcus Webb, the chief scientist attached to Lunar Command. "They're not just using advanced materials. Those ships are some kind of hybrid between technology and biology. The power requirements alone should be impossible, but they're doing it anyway." After 2 hours of demonstrations that pushed the boundaries of known physics, the Zephyrian ships returned to formation near Mars. Fleet Commander Kethvar's image appeared once again on the main screen, and this time there was no mistaking the smugness in their expression. "Admiral Vasquez, we trust that your people have been enlightened by our demonstration. The Zephyrian Empire offers humanity partnership and protection, but we believe it is important that you understand the vast gulf that exists between our respective capabilities. Your species has achieved remarkable things with such primitive technology, but surely you can see that the time has come to accept guidance from those more advanced than yourselves." Elena felt every eye in the command center focused on her. This was the moment that would define humanity's first contact with an alien species, and she could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. The aliens had made their point clear. They were superior in every measurable way, and humanity should be grateful for their condescending offer of partnership. But Elena Vasquez hadn't risen to the rank of admiral by backing down from a challenge, even one wrapped in diplomatic language. She straightened in her chair and looked directly into the alien commander's dark eyes. "Fleet Commander Kethvar, on behalf of humanity, I thank you for your impressive demonstration. Your technology is indeed remarkable, and your offer of partnership will require careful consideration by our leadership. However, I believe that true partnership requires mutual understanding. In the spirit of cultural exchange, perhaps you would be interested in observing some examples of human engineering?" There was a long pause before Kethvar responded, and when they did, their tone carried a note of what might have been amusement. "We would be curious to observe human military capabilities, though I confess we are uncertain what your species could demonstrate that would provide new insights into the nature of warfare." Elena smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Oh, I think you'll find our approach to combat quite educational, Fleet Commander. Would tomorrow at the same time be convenient for you?" After the transmission ended, Elena turned to her communications officer. "Chen, send a priority message to Admiral Harrison at Titan Command. Use the quantum encryption protocols and make sure no one else intercepts this transmission. Tell him that Operation Deep Strike is now active, and that I need the Prometheus to be ready for a demonstration of our own." Lieutenant Commander Chen's eyes widened slightly. Everyone in the defense fleet had heard rumors about the secret projects being developed in the outer system, but very few knew the details. "Ma'am," Should I also contact the other experimental facilities? Elena's smile grew wider and significantly more dangerous. Send the activation codes to all of them, Chen. If our new friends want to understand human military capabilities, then by God, we're going to give them an education they'll never forget. As night fell over Lunar Station, Elena stood once again at the observation ports, watching the distant gleam of the alien ships near Mars. Tomorrow, the Zephyrians would learn something that had been hard-earned knowledge throughout human history. Never challenge a species that had fought its way to the stars through millennia of warfare. Humanity might not have gravity manipulation or living ships, but they had something else entirely, the kind of creative destructiveness that came from being forged in conflict. The aliens thought they were offering humanity a glimpse of true power. Tomorrow, they would discover that humans had their own definition of that word, and it was written in fire and steel across the cold depths of space. Elena raised her cold coffee in a silent toast to the distant stars and whispered a promise to the darkness. You wanted to see what human engineering could do. Tomorrow, you're going to get exactly what you asked for. Captain Jake Reaper Morrison stood in the briefing room of the UHDF Prometheus, staring at the holographic display that showed the Zephyrian ships maintaining their arrogant position near Mars. His weathered hands gripped the edge of the conference table as Admiral Elena Vasquez's face appeared on the quantum communication screen from Lunar Station. Captain Morrison, I know this is short notice, but I need the Prometheus and her escort fleet ready for Operation Deep Strike in 18 hours. The aliens want to see human military capabilities, and we're going to show them exactly what they asked for. Jake nodded grimly. He had been commanding the Prometheus for 3 years, ever since the experimental dreadnought had completed its classified trials in the outer system. Few people in the defense fleet knew about the ship's true capabilities, and fewer still understood the revolutionary technologies that made her the deadliest warship humanity had ever constructed. Admiral, are we talking about a full demonstration, the complete package? Elena's expression was grim but determined. Everything, Captain. I want those alien bastards to understand that humanity didn't crawl out of the gravity well just to bow down to the first species that showed us some fancy technology. They think we're primitives playing with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Time to show them what primitives can accomplish when they get creative. After the transmission ended, Jake turned to address his senior staff. Commander Lisa Park, his first officer, was already pulling up tactical displays on the holographic projectors. Chief Engineer Rodriguez was reviewing power distribution charts, and Dr. Sarah Kim, the ship's physicist, was checking the status of the experimental weapons systems. Ladies and gentlemen, we just got the green light for Operation Deep Strike. I know we've all been wondering when we'd get the chance to show the galaxy what human engineering can really accomplish. Well, tomorrow we find out if 3 years of development and testing were worth the effort. Commander Park looked up from her displays. Sir, the escort fleet is already moving into position. The destroyers Ranger, Defiant, and Normandy are running final systems checks. The heavy cruiser Washington is standing by with the experimental railgun arrays, and the carrier Victory has launched a full squadron of Mark 7 fighters. Jake felt a familiar thrill of anticipation mixed with professional nervousness. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship. She was a testament to human ingenuity and a monument to the principle that sometimes the best defense was an overwhelming offense. Built in secret at the Titan shipyards over the past 5 years, she incorporated technologies that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. Status report on the main gun, Rodriguez? The chief engineer's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone who had spent years perfecting an impossible machine. The Ragnarok cannon is fully operational, Captain. We've got a clear firing solution to the asteroid belt, and the antimatter containment systems are running at optimal efficiency. One shot from that beauty will vaporize anything within a 10-kilometer radius and leave a crater visible from Earth. Dr. Kim added her own assessment from the science station. The gravity spike generators are online and calibrated. We might not be able to manipulate space-time like the aliens, but we can sure as hell make it very uncomfortable for anything in our vicinity. The inertial dampeners are rated for accelerations that would turn any biological crew into paste. Jake smiled grimly. The Prometheus represented a fundamentally different approach to space combat than anything the Zephyrians had demonstrated. Where the alien ships seemed to dance through space with elegant grace, the Prometheus was built like a sledgehammer designed to hit back twice as hard as anything that struck it first. Her hull was constructed from layered metamaterials that could absorb and redirect energy weapons. Her engines could accelerate her to speeds that would liquefy any unprotected organic crew, and her weapon systems were designed around a simple philosophy. If it needed to be destroyed, use enough firepower to make sure it stayed that way. The next 16 hours passed in a blur of final preparations and systems checks. Jake walked through every section of his ship, speaking with crew members who had trained for years without knowing if they would ever have the chance to show what they could do. These men and women had volunteered for an assignment that officially didn't exist, serving aboard a ship that wasn't supposed to be possible, all for the chance to defend humanity against threats that might never materialize. Now those threats were sitting arrogantly near Mars, convinced of their own superiority. As the designated time approached, Jake took his position in the command chair of the Prometheus. Around him, the bridge crew ran through their final checks with the professional calm that came from years of training. The ship's artificial intelligence, the OR, provided constant updates on system status in its characteristically dry voice. Captain, all weapons systems are online. Ragnarok cannon charged to full capacity. Escort fleet reports ready for demonstration protocols. Estimated time to target engagement range 14 minutes. Through the main view screen, Jake could see the distant gleam of the Zephyrian ships. They had arranged themselves in the same perfect triangular formation they had used during their own demonstration, clearly expecting to observe another primitive display of chemical rockets and crude nuclear weapons. They were about to be very surprised. Admiral Vasquez on Quantum Link, Captain, reported the communications officer. Elena's face appeared on the secondary screen, and Jake could see Lunar Station's command center buzzing with activity in the background. Captain Morrison, you are authorized to proceed with the demonstration. Show our guests what human ingenuity looks like when it's properly motivated. Jake activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. Today we have the honor of representing not just the defense fleet, but all of humanity in front of our first alien visitors. They've shown us their technology, and now we get to show them ours. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and let's give them a demonstration they'll be talking about for the next 1,000 years. The Prometheus and her escort fleet began their approach toward the demonstration zone, a carefully selected region of space between Mars and the asteroid belt. Jake had chosen the location specifically because it contained several large asteroids that would serve as perfect targets for the various weapons systems they were about to unveil. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the lead Zephyrian vessel, reported the communications officer. Fleet Commander Kethvar appeared on the main screen, and Jake noted that the aliens seemed slightly less smugly confident than they had during the previous day's conversation with Admiral Vasquez. Perhaps they were beginning to realize that the human ships approaching them were significantly different from anything they had expected to encounter. Captain Morrison, we are prepared to observe your demonstration. We confess curiosity about what technological capabilities your species has developed, though we hope you will not be disappointed if your achievements seem modest in comparison to what you witnessed yesterday. Jake smiled with the cold professionalism that had earned him his call sign during the Mars Independence War 20 years earlier. Fleet Commander, I appreciate your concern, but I think you'll find our approach to military technology quite enlightening. We humans have a saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Today, you're going to meet a very large dog. The transmission ended, and Jake turned his attention to the tactical displays. The escort fleet had spread out into attack formation, with the destroyers taking point positions and the heavy cruiser Washington moving to provide fire support. The carrier Victory had launched 2 full squadrons of fighters that were now sweeping the area for any potential threats. All ships report ready for demonstration, Captain, Commander Park announced from her station. Jake settled back in his command chair and activated the tactical command protocols. Very well. Let's begin with something simple. Washington, you are cleared to engage the target asteroid with conventional railgun batteries. The heavy cruiser Washington was a testament to human engineering in its own right, mounting 12 experimental railgun turrets that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of the speed of light, using magnetic fields and superconducting coils. When she opened fire, the result was spectacular, even by military standards. Streams of hypervelocity projectiles struck the target asteroid with the force of small nuclear weapons, each impact releasing enough energy to vaporize tons of rock and metal. Within seconds, the massive asteroid had been reduced to a cloud of superheated debris expanding outward in all directions. Impressive firepower, Doctor, Kim observed from the science station. The alien ships are definitely paying attention. Their sensor arrays are focusing on Washington's firing solutions. Jake nodded approvingly. The railgun demonstration was just the opening act. Victory, launch a full strike package. Show our guests what human fighter craft can accomplish. The carrier Victory disgorged a cloud of Mark 7 space superiority fighters, each one a masterpiece of human aerospace engineering. Unlike the flowing, organic curves of the Zephyrian vessels, The human fighters were angular and aggressive, built around the principle that the best way to survive in space combat was to destroy your opponent before they could effectively target you. The fighter squadron performed a series of attack runs on smaller asteroids, demonstrating coordinated tactics that had been refined through decades of human conflict. Their weapons were crude by alien standards: missiles with nuclear warheads, particle beam weapons powered by compact fusion reactors, and kinetic kill vehicles that relied on sheer velocity for their destructive potential. But what they lacked in exotic technology, they made up for in sheer vicious effectiveness. Each attack run was precisely coordinated, with fighters providing mutual support and overlapping fields of fire that would make it virtually impossible for an enemy to survive engagement. The target asteroids were systematically reduced to expanding clouds of debris with the efficiency that spoke to generations of human military doctrine refined in the crucible of interplanetary warfare. "Captain, sensors indicate the Zephyrian ships are repositioning," Commander Park reported. "They appear to be analyzing our tactical formations." Jake felt a cold smile spread across his face. The aliens were beginning to realize that human military doctrine was fundamentally different from anything they had encountered. Where the Zephyrians seemed to favor elegant demonstrations of superior technology, humanity approached warfare as a problem to be solved through superior tactics, overwhelming firepower, and the willingness to accept casualties in order to achieve victory. "All fighters return to base," he ordered. "It's time for the main event. Thor, bring the Ragnarok cannon online and target the largest asteroid in the demonstration zone." The Prometheus had been built around a single revolutionary weapon system that represented the pinnacle of human military technology. The Ragnarok cannon was an antimatter projector that could accelerate exotic matter to near-light speed and deliver it with surgical precision across interplanetary distances. It had taken 5 years to develop, cost more than the entire defense budget of most planetary colonies, and was capable of destroying anything smaller than a moon with a single shot. "Ragnarok cannon charged and ready, Captain." "Dr. K," Kim reported. "Target asteroid is designated and locked. Firing solution calculated and verified." Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's first contact with an alien species. They had been dismissed as primitives, condescended to by beings who thought their technology made them superior. Time to show the galaxy that humanity had its own definition of technological superiority: fire. The Ragnarok cannon discharged with no visible beam, no dramatic energy display, no elegant demonstration of exotic physics. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the target asteroid, a massive chunk of rock and metal nearly 2 kilometers in diameter, simply ceased to exist. The antimatter projectile struck it at 98% of light speed and converted the entire mass to energy in a reaction that briefly outshone the sun. The shock wave expanded outward from the impact point, carrying with it the vaporized remains of what had once been millions of tons of solid matter. Even at their safe distance, the Zephyrian ships registered the energy release on their sensors and began emergency maneuvering procedures as the expanding sphere of superheated plasma threatened to overwhelm their defensive systems. Jake watched the tactical displays with professional satisfaction as the aliens struggled to cope with the aftermath of the Ragnarok strike. Their elegant flowing ships were clearly not designed to handle the kind of brute force destruction that humanity specialized in. After several minutes of frantic maneuvering, the Zephyrian vessels managed to regain stable positions, but Jake could see that their perfect formation had been disrupted. "Captain, we're receiving an urgent transmission from Fleet Commander Kethva," the communications officer announced. The alien commander appeared on the main screen, and for the first time, their expression showed something other than smug superiority. They looked shaken, possibly even frightened, as they stared at the expanding cloud of plasma that had once been a mountain-sized asteroid. "Captain Morrison, that weapon. How is such a thing possible with your technology level? Our sensors detected exotic matter reactions that should require gravitational manipulation systems far beyond your current development." Jake leaned back in his command chair, enjoying the moment of confusion and respect in the alien's voice. "Fleet Commander, humanity has always specialized in finding creative solutions to difficult problems. You demonstrated elegant technology yesterday. Today, we're showing you effective technology. The difference is that our approach focuses on results rather than artistry." There was a long pause before Kethva responded, and when they did, their tone carried a note of what might have been genuine respect. "Your species continues to surprise us, Captain. We had assumed that your limited technological development would restrict you to primitive combat methods. This demonstration suggests that our intelligence regarding human capabilities was incomplete." Jake smiled coldly. Fleet Commander, you haven't seen anything yet. What you just witnessed was our equivalent of your elegant maneuvering display. Would you like to see what happens when we really want to destroy something? The transmission ended abruptly, and Jake turned to his senior staff with satisfaction. The first phase of Operation Deep Strike had gone exactly as planned. The aliens now understood that human military technology might be different from their own, but it was certainly not inferior. The question was whether they would be wise enough to reconsider their condescending attitude toward humanity, or whether they would need a more dramatic demonstration of what humans were capable of when properly motivated. Jake suspected they would need the more dramatic demonstration. In his experience, beings who were accustomed to superiority rarely gave it up easily. Tomorrow, the Prometheus would show the Zephyrian Empire exactly what human ingenuity looked like when it was specifically designed to destroy things that considered themselves indestructible. The aliens wanted to understand human military capabilities. By the time Operation Deep Strike was complete, they would understand them better than they ever wanted to. Fleet Commander HFY stood in the command center of the Zed Eternal Harmony, staring at the tactical displays that showed the human warships maintaining their positions in the demonstration zone. The elegant curves of the ship's bioneural walls pulsed with agitated patterns of color, reflecting the commander's own growing unease about the situation developing around Mars. The human demonstration had been unexpected. The Zephyrian intelligence services had spent decades studying Earth's military development, and their assessments had consistently indicated that humanity was still centuries away from developing weapons that could threaten advanced spacefaring civilizations. The antimatter cannon that had obliterated the asteroid suggested that human technological development had taken paths that Zephyrian science had never considered. Analysis report from the Science Division, announced Sub-Commander Veltar, their elongated fingers dancing across the bioneural interface panels. The exotic meta readings from the human weapon discharge indicate mastery of controlled antimatter projection. Such technology should require gravitational manipulation systems that we believed were beyond their current development level. HFY's large dark eyes focused on the tactical display showing the human fleet. The ships were crude by Zephyrian standards, all angular surfaces and obvious weapon mounts. But there was something about their formation that suggested a level of tactical sophistication that the intelligence reports had not prepared them for. What is the assessment of their fleet capabilities? Their ships appear to be constructed around weapons platforms rather than the integrated bioneural systems we employ. This suggests a fundamentally different approach to space combat doctrine. Where our vessels are designed for elegant superiority through advanced technology, their ships appear to be built for destruction. HFY felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control systems. In the 17 star systems that comprised the Zephyrian Empire, military force was primarily a matter of demonstration. Wars were won by showcasing technological superiority until the opposing force acknowledged defeat. The concept of designing warships, specifically to destroy other warships, was almost alien to Zephyrian thinking. Fleet Commander, we are receiving another transmission from Captain Morrison, announced the communications officer. The human captain appeared on the main display, and HFY noted that his expression showed none of the awe or intimidation that the Zephyrians had expected to see after their own demonstration. If anything, the human looked coldly professional, like a predator evaluating potential prey. Fleet Commander HFY, I hope you found our initial demonstration educational. However, Admiral Vasquez has requested that we provide a more comprehensive display of human military capabilities. Are you prepared for the next phase of our cultural exchange? There was something in the human's tone that triggered ancient instincts buried deep in Zephyrian evolution. Before their species had achieved spaceflight, before they had developed their bioneural technologies, the Zephyrians had been prey animals on a world filled with efficient predators. That genetic memory now whispered warnings that HFY tried to ignore. Captain Morrison, we are prepared to observe whatever demonstration your people wish to provide. We confess that your antimatter weapon was impressive by the standards of developing civilizations. The human smile was sharp and cold. Fleet Commander, I think there's been a misunderstanding about what constitutes a developing civilization. The weapon you observed was designed and built by a species that has been perfecting the art of warfare for over 10,000 years. Today, you're going to see what that experience looks like when it's properly applied. The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian command center in tense silence. Around the room, bioneural interfaces pulsed with increasingly agitated patterns as the ship's living systems responded to the crew's growing anxiety. Sub-Commander, what is the current status of our defensive systems? Veltar consulted the flowing displays with obvious concern. All bioneural barriers are operating at optimal efficiency, Fleet Commander. However, Our defensive systems are designed to deflect energy weapons and gravitational attacks. If the humans possess additional antimatter weapons, our ability to defend against direct matter-energy conversion is limited. On the tactical display, the human fleet was repositioning into a formation that the Zephyrian computers could not identify from their military databases. The angular warships moved with purpose and coordination that spoke to doctrine refined through actual combat rather than theoretical exercises. Captain Morrison's voice came through the communication system without warning, broadcast on all frequencies. Fleet Commander, what you're about to witness is the result of human military evolution. My species didn't reach the stars through elegant technology or superior science. We got here by being better at killing things than anything else in our solar system. Today's demonstration will show you what that means in practical terms. The human heavy cruiser Washington began the next phase of the demonstration by launching a full spread of what their sensors identified as fusion-powered missiles. But these were not the crude chemical rockets that Zephyrian intelligence had expected. Each missile was equipped with sophisticated AI guidance systems and was capable of independent maneuvering at accelerations that would crush any biological crew. Fleet Commander, those missiles are tracking toward our position. Kethva's training took over despite their growing apprehension. Activate defensive measures, deploy bioneural barriers, and prepare evasive maneuvers. The Eternal Harmony and her sister ships began the elegant dance that had made Zephyrian fleets feared across their region of space. The bioneural hulls shifted and flowed, creating energy barriers that could deflect most known weapons, while the ships themselves moved through space with the fluid grace that came from perfect integration between biological systems and advanced technology. For a moment, it seemed as though the Zephyrian defensive systems would easily handle the human missile attack. The bioneural barriers deflected the first wave of weapons, and the ship's maneuvering capabilities allowed them to avoid direct hits from the remaining projectiles. Then the missiles did something that no weapon in Zephyrian experience had ever done. They learned. The AI systems controlling each missile analyzed the Zephyrian defensive responses and adapted their attack patterns in real time. When the bioneural barriers deflected energy attacks, the missiles switched to kinetic penetrators. When the ships maneuvered to avoid impact, the missiles anticipated the evasive patterns and adjusted their targeting accordingly. Within minutes, the elegant Zephyrian defensive formation had been reduced to chaos as the ships struggled to cope with weapons that refused to behave according to established tactical doctrine. Several missiles penetrated the bioneural barriers and detonated against the hulls of the alien vessels, their fusion warheads causing visible damage to ships that had not been seriously threatened in decades. Damage report, Kethva demanded as the ship shuddered under the impact of explosions. Bioneural barriers at 60% efficiency and falling, Veltar reported with obvious distress. Hull breaches on decks 12 through 15. The humans' weapons are adapting faster than our defensive systems can compensate. On the tactical display, the human destroyer Normandy was beginning its own attack run, and Kethva felt a chill of genuine fear as they realized that the missile attack had only been the opening move in a coordinated assault. The destroyer's weapons were different from anything the Zephyrians had encountered. Streams of accelerated particles that struck their targets with the force of meteorite impacts. Fleet Commander, the human destroyer is targeting our propulsion system specifically. They appear to be attempting to disable rather than destroy us. The realization hit Kethva like a physical blow. The humans weren't trying to kill them. They were demonstrating that they could disable the most advanced warships in the Zephyrian fleet whenever they chose to do so. It was a display of tactical superiority that was far more intimidating than simple destruction would have been. Emergency transmission to the human fleet, Kethva ordered. Request immediate ceasefire. Captain Morrison's face appeared on the main screen, and his expression was coldly professional. Fleet Commander, is there a problem with our demonstration? Captain Morrison, we acknowledge the effectiveness of your weapons systems. There is no need to continue this exercise. The human captain's smile was sharp enough to cut metal. Fleet Commander, with respect, this exercise will continue until my admiral determines that you fully understand human military capabilities. What you've seen so far represents standard human military doctrine applied against an unknown technological threat. The real demonstration is about to begin. The transmission ended, and on the tactical display, the massive human dreadnought Prometheus began moving toward the Zephyrian formation. The ship was a monument to human engineering philosophy, brutal, efficient, and designed around weapons systems that existed for a single purpose: the complete destruction of anything that threatened humanity. Fleet Commander, the human dreadnought is powering up weapon systems that our sensors cannot classify. Energy readings suggest exotic matter reactions on a scale significantly larger than their previous antimatter demonstration. Kethva stared at the approaching warship and finally understood the true nature of the mistake the Zephyrian Empire had made. They had assumed that technological advancement followed predictable paths, that superior science automatically translated to superior military capability. They had never considered that a species might develop advanced weapons technology specifically because they had spent millennia learning how to kill things more effectively than anything else in their environment. Open a channel to Captain Morrison, emergency priority. The human appeared on screen, and for the first time since first contact, Kethva spoke without any trace of condescension or superiority. Captain, we formally request that this demonstration be concluded. The Zephyrian Empire acknowledges that human military capabilities exceed our previous assessments. Captain Morrison's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained coldly professional. Fleet Commander, I appreciate your honesty. However, this demonstration was requested by your people, and Admiral Vasquez believes it's important that you understand exactly what you're dealing with when you interact with humanity. The final phase will show you what happens when humans design weapons specifically to destroy things that consider themselves indestructible. The Prometheus's main gun, the weapon the humans called Ragnarok, began charging with energy readings that defied Zephyrian understanding of physics. Unlike their previous antimatter demonstration, this weapon seemed to be designed around principles that the alien sensors couldn't even classify. What are your people? Kethwa whispered, though they hadn't intended to speak aloud. Captain Morrison heard the question and answered with brutal honesty. Fleet Commander, we are what happens when a species spends 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare. We are what evolution produces when survival depends on being more dangerous than anything else in your environment. We are apex predators that learn to build starships. The Ragnarok cannon discharged, but this time the target was not an asteroid. Instead, the weapon created what could only be described as a controlled implosion in empty space. A demonstration of humanity's ability to manipulate matter and energy on scales that approached stellar engineering. The energy release was visible from Earth, a brief new star that announced to the galaxy that humanity had weapons capable of rewriting the laws of physics when properly motivated. As the light faded, Captain Morrison's voice carried across all communication channels. Fleet Commander, humanity appreciates the Zephyrian Empire's offer of partnership. However, we believe that true partnership requires mutual respect between equals. This demonstration was designed to establish that equality. We are not a developing civilization in need of guidance. We are a spacefaring military power with weapons and doctrine refined through millennia of conflict. Any future relationship between our peoples will be conducted on that basis. Kethva stared at the slowly dissipating energy signature where the Prometheus had demonstrated its ultimate weapon and finally understood the true significance of humanity's achievement. The humans hadn't just reached the stars despite their violent nature, they had reached the stars because of it. Their entire technological development had been driven by the need to build better weapons, more efficient killing machines, more effective methods of destroying their enemies. Sub-Commander Veltar, prepare a full report for the Imperial Council. Include complete tactical analyses of all human weapon systems and military doctrine. Priority classification, apex threat. Fleet Commander, what assessment should I include regarding future relations with humanity? Kethva looked once more at the human warships maintaining their precise formation in the demonstration zone, and spoke with the certainty of someone who had just learned a fundamental truth about the nature of the universe. Assessment. The Zephyrian Empire has encountered a species that represents the apex evolution of spacefaring military power. Recommendation. Immediate establishment of formal diplomatic relations based on mutual respect between military equals. Warning. Under no circumstances should the Zephyrian Empire be perceived as a military threat to human interests. These beings are not just warriors. They are what warriors become when they spend 10,000 years learning to kill things more effectively than anyone else in the galaxy. As the Zephyrian fleet began its journey back to their home systems, Kethva reflected on the lesson their people had learned that day. They had come to Sol System expecting to encounter a primitive civilization that would be awed by superior technology. Instead, they had met apex predators who had turned the art of warfare into a science, and the science of warfare into an expression of species-wide survival instinct. The humans were right about one thing: true partnership required equality. And today, the Zephyrian Empire had learned that humanity had achieved that equality not through elegant technology or superior science, but through the simple expedient of being more dangerous than anything else they had ever encountered. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. Back on Luna Station, Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the Zephyrian ships disappearing into the outer system and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The aliens had learned what every other species in human history had eventually discovered: never challenge a people whose entire technological development had been driven by the need to kill things more effectively than anything else in their environment. Humanity had reached for the stars not despite their violent nature, but because of it. And now the galaxy was about to learn what that meant for everyone else who called the cosmos home. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and it would be written in the stars themselves with letters of fire and steel. The universe had just met its new apex predators, and they had names like Prometheus and Ragnarok and Victory. They flew ships built like weapons and fought wars like natural disasters, and they had just announced to the galaxy that the age of human weakness was officially over. Fleet Commander Kethvar had asked what humans were. The answer was simple: they were what happened when apex predators learned to build starships. And now, for the first time in galactic history, that answer belonged to a species that could back it up with weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics when properly motivated. The demonstration was over. The education of the galaxy was just beginning.